Woo, it's a scorcher out, 100 degrees plus. Today's video, we're gonna be replacing some parts on this KTM 350 XWF. Let's jump right in. What's up guys, welcome to Trail Tune Up. My name's Jason, and today we are gonna be replacing some damaged parts on this 2024 KTM 350 XWF. Got the parts right here. First thing that we're gonna be replacing is what's known as the license plate holder, even though this dirt bike doesn't have a license plate. So that's gonna be this part right here. And one thing I wanna explain to some of you, you'll notice when you're looking for parts for your 350 XWF, quite a few websites do not contain the OEM spec parts for this exact bike. But if you buy parts for a 350 EXC, then you should be good. This is from an EXC, and I've even actually placed some EXC parts on this bike. And as some of you may know, the only real difference between an XWF and an EXC, realistically, are turn signals, brake lights, things like that that would make it street legal. Other than that, pretty much same exact bike with swappable parts. And this is the other piece that we are going to be replacing on the bike. I've got the tiniest little part right here that broke when I was practicing wheelies and ate shit. So this is known as the OEM parts air filter bottom part. So it took me forever to actually figure out what this part was called and locate it. I had to actually go to the diagram and isolate the part right there and then figure out what it was called. So here's the part number of what we're looking at here. For this piece right here, here's the part number that we're looking at right here. Now, one thing I do want to mention to you, because this is considered a license plate holder for a street legal model, the only difference between the one that's on my bike and the one I'm holding right here is this small little hole right here that you would use for your license plate bracket. Other than that, should be the same exact size and should fit totally fine. I don't really mind having the little hole in there. I also could not find an XWF model on motorsport.com or Revzilla under OEM parts. So realistically, just look for the EXC and then you can locate the parts that you need for your XWF. I think I've maybe come across once or twice actually seeing XWF on there, but for whatever reason, it's not as popular of a bike, I guess, and so they don't make OEM parts for it. No, that can't be it. I'm not too sure why. I think this bike was only been made in 2024. Don't quote me on that because I could be wrong, but perhaps that's why they don't have it listed on their sites. But either way, we found the parts we needed. We're gonna install them now. Let's jump right in. Not sure how well you can see that, but when I did take a spill, it really scratched up this back area. It's not so bad, but you know, I completely broke my light, but I already replaced the light. And when I was doing that, and I noticed that I had a small crack right in here. So we're gonna go ahead and replace this part as well while we're at it. You might as well just do it and get it done. So we're gonna go ahead and pull out our handy dandy toolkit that came with their bike. I say this all the time, but when I first got this kit, I looked at it and I was like, I'm never gonna use this. I have so many tools. Why would I ever use this? And turns out I use this all the time. So there you go. The main thing I end up using the most is this and all these different bits, pieces that are available in here. And we have a bird going wild right now. All right, so our first order of business is gonna be taking off this seat. Thing I love about this bike is it's just one bolt right here. You loosen it up. All right, and now that we've taken the bolt off, we just push this forward. Comes right out like that and reveals the super dirty under part of this. One thing I want to point out for some of you who are like, why does he have tape right here? This sort of rubber guard that covers up the positive terminal of the battery, it is really susceptible to coming off. Really, you only need this for when you're working on it, because imagine, you know, you've got your gas right here, you've got the negative exposed side. Let's say you drop a tool and it touches between these two, arcs up right by your gas. You could risk blowing up. So it's important to put something on here when you're working on it. You don't have to leave it on here when you're riding. I just leave it on. It's probably time to change it. It looks like it's starting to come off, but and using the same exact size that we did to take off the seat, we're going to remove these two screws right here and here. So let's go ahead and do that. And again, using the same exact size that we used to remove the seat and the two top bolts, we are going to remove this bolt right here as well as that one. So let's go ahead and do that. Now that we've removed those two bolts, I can also see another reason why I needed to replace this piece. This seemed to have broken as well right here, so it's a good thing that we're removing this piece. Also, I'm not sure if you can see it, but the white part right here, they're supposed to be something that can bolt from here into there. So that's also why we're replacing the back of the airbox right here, because, well, we lost some pieces when we had our fun little crash here. So next thing that we're gonna do is this bolt. There would have been one right there, but obviously, like I said, because this piece broke off right here from the white part, we didn't have that attached. And you do need to downsize from this larger one on the left that we were using for everything else, and we're going to go ahead and use this smaller one right here. So let's do that now. All right, so here are all the bolts we've taken out so far. This is the one that came from the seat. We're going to stick it in here. Can't recommend doing something like this enough. Keep your bolts where you need them, or put them in organized way so you know what goes where. These are the ones that were under the seat holding that rear bracket on. So I'm going to place those up here and here. These are the two that came from under the bike. And then this is the one that has a cracked piece that we're missing. So I do have this located somewhere in my toolbox. And another thing I wanted to point out, if you work on your bike a lot, definitely get yourself something like this. I believe this is actually where I stored that extra one, and it obviously comes with a lot of extras as well. So obviously we have plenty to work with here, and it's just nice to have. So now that we've removed the various bolts, it's time for this thing to come off. So it kind of fits on weird. You want to kind of pull up on this piece and pull back. And there you go. Under here, you can see, obviously it's pretty dirty. We're gonna have to cut that zip tie right there. That is the electrical wire that's feeding our light back here. And we will need to undo all of these bolts in here to detach it from the bracket. So let's go ahead and jump in and do that. Let's go ahead and snip this zip tie off. We'll obviously be replacing that. And what we might as well do to make this a little bit easier on ourselves is we're gonna go ahead and pull this piece out. Now, what I like to do is there are like these little tabs right here, and you can pull it out like that. And then you'll be able to just get in here and just pull this off. Now, it does require just a little bit of force. There's no special tabs or anything like that, but you know, now that we've got it completely taken off, it's gonna be a little bit easier to work on, because we do have to remove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts to get this off here. I am keeping this part. It didn't get scraped up too bad. Plus, I don't want to buy more graphics. So we're keeping this part, we're taking off this one. And luckily, we can use the same exact size that we just got done using. So let's go ahead and take all these parts off now. Let's say you ever get confused on what's what. These screws that screw directly into plastic, they've got kind of like this rounded head on them. So that's a good way to differentiate if you ever get your screws mixed up. These kind generally are always going to be going straight into the plastic. And you're gonna notice that literally every single one of these looks like that, because it's basically just going into plastic. Now, one thing you're going to want to take note of when you actually pull this piece off, keep in mind that when this is flipped over, this wire runs along the right side. Obviously, it's going to be upside down when we have it flipped up like this. When you take this piece off here, just make note of where everything sort of sits and how everything runs. You'll notice that right here, there are sort of these little tabs that the wire runs through, and then the wire itself actually does run directly through this piece right here, as you may or may not be able to see. So just really make note of that when you're taking this apart, so that you remember how to put it back together. And as you can see, and what I'll show you here, is when we pull this through, it almost doesn't seem like this piece could fit through here, but it most certainly can, and it most certainly will. So let's go ahead and get it through here. There we go. So that's something to really remember, is that this piece actually needs to feed through this hole right here. And then these are those tabs that I was telling you that this needs to kind of run through. This one you'll actually have to pull up on to get it through there. But now we're all set. This thing can go in the garbage. We don't need it anymore. It's broken anyways. And let's just take a look to kind of make sure, is there really any difference here between these two? This is the one from the XWF, and this is the one from the EXC. And as you can see, exactly the same thing. The only difference is right here, this little hole right there. That's the only thing that's different between these two. And even these numbers right here, they all match. So like I said, when it comes to ordering parts for your XWF, almost every single time, if you do not see the XWF model on the website, you can order OEM parts from the EXC, and you can even order aftermarket parts for the EXC and EXC-F bikes. They will all fit. So just know that, good little tip. So our next step is essentially to attach this to this with obviously installing the light as well. This is super dirty, so I'm just gonna give it a quick little clean and then we'll be right back. Now we're nice and clean. It is still a little wet, so I'm gonna throw it in the sun and it's gonna take about 3 seconds to dry because it's so freaking hot outside. But let's go ahead and put this in the sun. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna attach our light right here and run our wiring. So basically, as you can see, the light fits right in here and bolts in. There's 2 little grooves that can actually fit into. So we're gonna attach those 2 screws here and here in the back. So let's do that first. And as you can see, all these screws are meant for going into plastic and they all look exactly the same. Therefore, we can use any of them. And obviously when you're going into plastic, you really do not wanna over tighten. You know, just snug this down. It doesn't need to be with the strength of the Lord or whatever you'd call it. So just get it till it's getting to the edge and then you can call it at that point. These are threading in far enough where it does not need to be super tight on there. All right, so there you go. We got our 2 bolts here and here. Now the light is nice and secure and we are gonna start running our wiring. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get it under this piece right here, and then we're gonna actually lift this tab right there. We need to lift it up with our thumb and stick this under there. So let me go ahead and do that real quick first. All right. And then it's gonna run basically straight through here like this. So now this is basically ready. These 3 pieces right here, 1, 2, 3, they correspond with this license plate holder bracket, 1, 2, 3. But first, before we do that, we're going to want to feed the wiring through this hole right here. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, we are fed through. And now we're going to bring this all the way through. And then we're gonna line those pieces up. 1, 2, 3. And then it's basically gonna be coming out of this area right here, and we're just gonna leave it like that. Notice how there's some space for it so the wires don't get smashed or cut or anything like that. And then we're basically gonna reinstall our pieces. So let's go ahead and get that started now. So right now what I'm gonna do is I have 3 remaining screws right here. I'm gonna put them in here, 1, 2, and 3. Same concept goes here. Don't over tighten them. We're going straight into plastic, so you don't wanna strip those by overdoing it. You will obviously meet some resistance because you are kind of almost cutting a new path every time. Not completely, but you know, plastic bends and molds, and it just kind of feels like there's a little bit more resistance than when you're threading into like a normal receptor for something like this. All right, so there you have it. I mean, I don't really mind having that on there, do you? It looks a heck of a lot better than it did, and now we're gonna move on to the much bigger project. Since we are replacing the entirety of this white part, this mud flap has to come off there. It's luckily the same exact size that we've been using this whole time in terms of the head of this tool. And so when we pull this out, we're gonna wanna keep this metal bracket right here because we're gonna need that This is how hot it is my GoPro actually shut off while I was taking the mud flap off from right here. So as you can see, we've got the mud flap right here now. We've got the two pieces. We're going to keep those with them because that's how we know what goes where, and you definitely want to keep those metal parts right there for when we install it onto here. So next up is we are going to grab from our KTM toolkit the smallest star wrench that we can find to get this bolt as well as this bolt out and take these to free them from this here. And I actually noticed, look, even this one got broken. I mean, there is like so much that got cracked in here when I had that fall. So I'm really glad we're taking the time to replace this now. Removing this part, we're gonna use a Torx wrench. We're gonna use the smallest one that came with our kit, and we're gonna remove this bolt right here as well as the one on the other side. So let's go ahead and get that off. So while I was looking at this, and full disclosure, this is the first time that I've ever replaced the back of the airbox before. And I was like, you know what, I can just figure it out on my own. And a lot of these things you can. And I'm realizing I'm gonna have to take off both side panels. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. We're gonna start with this piece right here. It's so funny how giant this bolt is for holding on a side panel, but you know, hey, there you go. So we're using our largest Torx wrench, the Torx 45, to get this one off. There you go. Okay. All right, so I went ahead and moved the bike over into some light so you could see things a little bit better. And if that doesn't earn a subscription from you on the channel, then, well, I don't know what to say. Maybe drop a like, a comment on the video right down there. Be super helpful. We've removed this piece right here. Next thing we have to do, the way that this hooks into here is it's got some kind of notches that are like this. So we actually have to sort of pull backwards like that to get them out. And once you do that, you should be able to free this up and sort of turn it upwards, and then you're able to remove that out. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do the same exact thing to the other side. Let's do that now. And when I said we're gonna do the same exact thing, I kind of lied, because obviously we've been able to pull the airbox cover off. So really we just need to undo this part right here. We need to undo this part right here, and then we'll be able to pull that right off. So let's start with getting this one off. All right, and then we'll go ahead and we need to grab another size for that one. What I like that KTM did is a lot of their bolts you can either use something like the traditional sort of socket. This is an 8mm one, or it also has the Torx setting, and you can use a Torx 30, and you could also use that one to get in there and pull this off. So it's nice that they give us options. All right, so now that we've got that piece off, boom, just like that. This is the entire piece that we're gonna be replacing. So we have a lot more work to do. That's all right, and we're gonna do it now. All right, and in the interest of time, I've loosened some of these bolts. So we're gonna wanna take this one off right here. We're also gonna end up taking off this black rubber piece. All this does is basically stop it from vibrating against the exhaust and letting the exhaust melt this piece. So we are gonna pull that off and actually save it. We also have removed these right here, here, and here. And obviously we're gonna have to take that off and just put it to the side. So those are the 4 that you are going to remove next. We actually have to remove these parts on the exhaust to get this off. I've gone ahead and done that already. Make sure that you have these 2 little locking stacked washers on here, and keep them in the same direction they were. You're gonna need those obviously to put them back on. So just remember when you take those off of here and here, and we use the 8mm to pull this one off from the KTM toolkit. So grab your spring puller and get ready to scream. Oh, just kidding. These obviously aren't the easiest to get off unless you're me, and then it just is really easy, I guess. All right, so we're just gonna kind of rotate this till it comes off. That gives us plenty of room to work with getting this piece off. And this isn't gonna be easier either, but once I figure it out, I'm gonna come back. Oh, we got most of it. I just want to make sure we're not pulling against any parts that, there we go. All right. So as you can see, you just kind of got to wiggle things off. Now remember, there's this piece over here that we unscrewed earlier. I'm just going to let that hang for right now. It's not too heavy, so it shouldn't be a problem. And there we go. We removed this piece. Something else I want to point out. This is what you use when you're maybe hard enduro riding and it holds your kickstand in place. Obviously, we still want that, so we're going to have to remove that from here to put it on our other one. It's really easy. You just pull from the back side and give it a little yank and it comes right out like that. So we're going to save this piece. Nothing else on here needs to be used. Again, we're going to toss it. I'm seeing a lot of parts that are kind of hard to reach and clean. So obviously we pull off our air filter. We'll get our trusty contact cleaner. We'll just kind of spray around some of these parts and try to clean it up a little bit. Doesn't have to be crazy clean, especially down here, because these are actually parts that are outside of the seal of the airbox, but still, some of these parts right here that lay within, we're really going to want to try to clean those off real good. And while we're here, let's talk about the myth of greasing up your air filter to get a better seal. These days on newer bikes, you do not need to do that. That was a tale from the past, which very much so was relevant back then. But nowadays, you can buy something like a PC Racing seal that you put right around here, and it's squishy and allows you to get a little bit stronger contact and a little bit better of a seal. Or you could run it without and you would still be fine. But you know, I like to have it on there, and feels good to get that extra little bit of tightness on there. And I've really never had any issues. So here's the piece that we're going to be installing in there. I've gone ahead and tucked this up here, but inevitably that'll get put down here and screwed in right there. You're going to notice these kind of grooves right here, and essentially what's going to happen is, like, this metal right here fits right into those grooves. This part goes directly to this piece, and same thing goes over here. This groove right here is what that's going to fit into right under there. And so we're going to go ahead, and we're also going to install this black piece once we get it up and on there. So let's go ahead and jump right into doing all that. That side on. Now we're going to come over here and just make sure everything's fitting together. So now we've got it all in there. Next thing we're going to do is add in our screws. We're going to reinstall the exhaust. We're going to put those screws in, and then we'll be ready to insert our mud flap. So my camera is just getting absolutely crushed by this heat, and it keeps powering off. I was able to get this piece back on. Main thing here is down in this little part right here, you're going to see sort of this line along there. It's actually a piece that fits in to sort of a really thin piece. So you really want to make sure that that's all lined up in there, so that you get a nice seal. It's basically right down in here. It basically is pushed into there. I then attach these points, and I also attach this point right here. Something I want to mention, these are screws that go into plastic, and there is no threading inside this. So you are technically making the threading the very first time you insert these. So do not over tighten, and you should be good. You want to just get it nice and hand tight. So those two parts, this part right here, and then this one right here. And next we're going to go ahead and install the exhaust again. So we just reinstalled the exhaust. I put this little black piece on here that's going to stop this from getting melted, and I started to thread this piece in here. One pointer piece of advice that I want to give you guys is, when you're putting this on, sort of lift it. One, you want to make sure it's angled the direct way, so you'll need to like sort of angle it to get this in there. You don't want to screw this while this is on there. See how that's hard to screw, and when I lift up I actually can move it? That's because we're creating pressure on it when we're not alleviating that pressure by holding this up. So just make sure that you kind of alleviate the pressure and hold it up while you screw your exhaust back in on those points. And whenever you're attaching something to your bike with multiple points, you do not want to tighten one and then the other. You want to do little by little. Resistance, so I'm going to move back over to this one, still alleviating any potential pressure. I'm going to get that to about the same point. We'll go to this one, At this point, now it's pretty locked in. You don't have to alleviate the pressure. It's pretty much being held. That one's at about 5 pounds. And now we're just gonna give it a nice turn to there. That's probably around 30, that's probably around 20 pounds per foot. And I'd say that's pretty good. I just added in our mud flap. Remember now, these were screws that go into plastic. This is brand new, so there is no threading, so you are creating the thread. So you wanna make sure that you give even pressure, you put it in straight, and you do about, you know, a couple turns here, a couple turns there, a couple turns here, a couple turns, alternate until you get it nice and snug, and then you're good to go. The last thing you wanna do is really crank one down and then crank the other. You're gonna make this one go in at an angle, and while it may hold for a little while, eventually it could break off. So this is all set. Let's move on to getting our side panels back on the bike. You see these grooves, this piece right here. These basically hook under here to hold it in place. So you really want to make sure that when you're putting this on, that you get these right here. Try not to block it. You want to get these hooked under there. All right, so this piece, not terribly complicated, but we got to think of a couple things. See these two pieces right here and see these hooks right there. This needs to go inside those hooks like so. And then you need to push it forward like that. And now it's locked in. Next, we need to get this piece right here that's protruding out under there so it gets held by that. Now, there are two tabs under here. One that we're getting in there, and the other is in there as well. And now both tabs are under the white piece, and now this is actually sitting in there correctly. So next thing that we are going to do is we're going to grab our Torx wrench, the very small 15, and we're going to get this piece attached back to the bike right here. When you don't need to go terribly tight, we're good there. Then we're going to grab our largest Torx bit. We're going to get this inside of there. And this is going to take a little bit because this is a longer one. And I always go gently. If you feel any like weird resistance, you're probably going to strip it and you're probably threading it incorrectly. So just make sure, you know, that it feels normal when it's going in there. And then we're just going to snug it down real nice. And that should be good right there. So now that side panel is on, we're going to move on to the next side panel. And one thing I wanted to mention that I forgot to, that you definitely want to do and is very important, is that you use your spring puller, and we want to reattach this spring right here. And there we go. Now we're set. All right, so remember from earlier when we took this piece off, this is the piece that hangs down and you can basically hold your kickstand in place if you're doing some hard enduro riding, or really if you just want to make sure it's not falling down. I'll be honest, this thing has never come down on me once, but I still like the fact that, you know, this is available to me should I need it. So really easy, just stick this in the hole, turn it so that it goes parallel with this piece right here, pull it down, and you're in place, you're good to go. So the next thing we're going to do is we are attaching this side panel right here. Something I want to mention, again, these have these tabs right here and here, and they need to go under here. I'm amazed when I look at how KTM designed these plastics. They're really well made in terms of how everything fits together. I can feel that that's starting to get in there. We're good there. Everything's looking and feeling good. Another little trick and tip that you may have seen on my channel, I like to run my finger all along here and just make sure that it's all sitting inside of the seal, under, around, over the top. You just kind of got to run your finger along it, but that's all looking good. Now, put this last piece in. Tap, tap. And we're set. Next up, what we've done is we've zip tied right under here. You could do it to both points. I'm just gonna do it to the one. And one thing I wanna point out here is under here, you see some space. This black part goes under, the orange part goes on top, and you want to keep this cable up above as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get under there, and it's okay to sort of pull the black part down to get it up and over. And as you can see, now we're up and over, and this is where it gets a little tricky. You want to really pull hard and push up, and now we're seated in there well. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and attach this again. You're going to see these sort of 3 metal pieces. You want to align those with those 3 metal receivers in there. So I've got the 3 at the top right there. You want to push it in. There we go. We are now attached. And what I usually do is I just sort of coil the cable right around here, and then I stick this part right back in here, and we open up this little piece, and that allows it to sort of stay inside right there. And now that's locked in. It's not going anywhere. It's out of the way. We're good to go. And we are just going to go ahead and insert our other pieces. So next up, I'm going to take these longer ones, and we're going to get them inside of these 2 locations here and here. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now all we have left is to fasten a bunch of these parts under here. I think there's about 4 screws, but first I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to place the seat back on here, kind of push down on it as we pull back. Now I can feel that that actually sat in place. I'm going to take this longer bolt, it's the longest out of all the bolts that we have. We're going to place it in the top, and we're just going to screw that in. That's good enough. It's a really long bolt, so it grabs plenty. And now we are going to go under and finalize this project. The last parts we need to do are these 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and our project is complete. Pretty easy to do those. You are going to need 2 different sizes here. I've got a 6mm head as well as an 8mm, so I'm going to go ahead and throw those sockets on and get those bolts in there, and we'll be back after these messages. All right, so that's it for the video. It took about an hour and 45 minutes to do everything, which is pretty good considering I didn't look at a manual. I just looked for every single bolt, pulled this thing off. I've obviously done the plastics plenty of times before. I've replaced the light before, so I kind of knew what I was in for with that, but I had never replaced the back of the airbox before, so that was the first time there. And kind of the reason why I made this video and I didn't want to look at any manual is I wanted to show you guys that there's nothing to be afraid of when it comes to working on your dirt bike. I probably rode dirt bikes for about 10 or 12 years before I actually started working on them myself, so I'm somewhat new to this, and it's not as hard as I always envisioned it to be. Once you start to work on your bike and take it apart and put it back together, you really get an understanding of what's what. So if you guys like this video, if you guys felt that it was helpful or informative, drop a like on the video, drop a comment, and let me know the next kind of content you want to see me make, and make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for notifications. My name's Jason. We'll see you out on the trail.